Hi, everyone. And I want to make sure Bonnie gets introduced. Is that the next slide? Yeah, coming up. So I also want to introduce you all to my co-speaker today, Bonnie Bull. She is the president of the Miracle Messages Advisory Council, and has been leading that group of folks who have lived experience of homelessness to help inform the work that we do. There's 7 or 8 members, I think, 7 on the board. And then we also have Biscotti. Biscotti, would you like to say a few words? He licked the mic, if you didn't see that. He loves you all that much. So I'm really excited to have Bonnie co-present with me. She's going to share the story of hope, and then I think we're going to have a short conversation afterwards. Yeah. So let me just begin with this photo here. You don't need to raise your hand or anything, but just kind of shout out, what do you see going on in this photo? What's happening here? Man, this guy. Yeah, that's basically it. He ruined the punchline. Who invited this guy? That's okay. I'll remember you. So, anyways, yes, this is a social experiment that was done from the New York City Rescue Mission back in 2014. I'm glad the photo is recognized. And the experiment was basically individuals walk down the streets as members of their families were dressed up to look homeless, and then to see what the interaction was or lack thereof of an interaction. And the experiment was run about 5 or 6 times with different groups. Not a single person recognized their own brother or sister, son or daughter, husband or wife, or in this lady's case, that's her mom and that's her dad. So, a starting point for me in thinking about this issue is, would you recognize your loved one if you walk by them on the streets? And, if you're kind of into neuroscience like me, the neuroscientists at Princeton and Duke found that the part of our brain that activates when we see a person compared to an inanimate object, this is the medial prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain was found not to activate when we see someone that we perceive to be part of an extreme outgroup in our society, including people experiencing homelessness. The parts of the brain that do activate are the right amygdala and the left insula. These are the regions associated with disgust. It's like you saw vomit on the floor, that kind of feeling. That's the starting point many of us have on this issue of homelessness. So my starting point really begins with this slide. Do you know what this photo is? Okay, good. That's my family. Just wanted to, yeah, good one. That's me at the bottom left. That's my grandparents, my brother, my mom. In the middle there, that's my Uncle Mark. Mark was favorite member of my extended family. He remembered every birthday. He also suffered from schizophrenia and spent 30 years living on and off the streets of Santa Cruz. And, it wasn't until I was in college, sophomore year of college, I got a phone call from my dad, and he was crying, and he called to say that, Uncle Mark had been found deceased. And up until that moment, I never really thought of Uncle Mark as a homeless man. He was just a beloved member of my family. And so after he died, I started thinking, gosh, everyone I'm walking by, that's someone's son or daughter, someone's brother or sister, some kid's beloved uncle or aunt. And I started wondering, like, why is it that I don't see people I'm walking by as someone's somebody? Why do I see people as problems to solve, not people to love? And so I did my own version of an experiment where for 1 year, I spent a year with 24 individuals who are experiencing homelessness who volunteered to wear GoPro cameras around their chests. And the basic premise was pretty simple. I just walked by you, you're still here. What's it like to be you? What do you wish I knew, passersby knew that maybe we don't? And I watched dozens of hours of pretty heartbreaking footage over and over again, people just being ignored and rejected. And it was hard to watch. But in one of the clips, I heard something that really changed my life. And, it was a very simple statement, but pretty profound. He said, I never realized I was homeless when I lost my housing, only when I lost my family and friends. And that piece that I've come to call relational poverty as an overlooked form of poverty, extreme disconnection, isolation, often accompanied by a level of stigma and shame that makes it very difficult to form relationships. Turns out that when you ask people experiencing homelessness, what is the immediate cause of your homelessness? About 1 in 3 attribute some form of relational breakdown or brokenness to, to the cause of homelessness. Now, sometimes that's because there's a good reason to disconnect from social support systems, abuse, violence, it's unsafe home environment. So it's not to sugarcoat and say, oh, you just need to reconnect. That's not what we're saying here, but something about social supports keeping so many people who are right on the edge of falling into potentially homelessness or a worse situation, relying on those social supports to kind of get by. So at Miracle Messages, the nonprofit I created, we have this belief that relational poverty is a form of poverty. And so, 10 years ago, not knowing anything about this issue, I just thought, I'm just going to walk down the street, go up to everyone I see who's visibly homeless, and ask a very simple question, which is, do you have anyone you want to reconnect to? Right? Didn't know where that would lead, just felt like something kind of a next step to do. And that's how I met Johnny. Johnny, when I met him, I was at St. Anthony Foundation, San Francisco, in the Tenderloin. They've been serving meals for, I think, over 70 years now. And I went in, made an announcement. I'm offering this service. Is anyone interested? No one was interested. Everyone's kind of like, what is this guy offering? And I'm walking out, and he just comes up to me and says, hey, I haven't seen my family in, 22, 23 years. So sat down with him, recorded a video from Johnny to his family. He has, turns out, all these brothers and sisters. Went online, found a Facebook group connected to his hometown, Oxnard, California. Posted the video there with a short note. Within 1 hour, the video was shared hundreds of times, made the local news that night, and friends and classmates and neighbors started commenting saying, hey, I know Johnny, I know his family, I recognize the last name. Is this a relative of yours? And within a few days, we were able to, right there, you can see actually some of the posts. Thank you, Kevin. Been looking for my brother for almost 30 years. Bill Dwyer. OMG, this is my BFF's uncle. She is going to see him this weekend. Thank you for uploading this. This is my uncle. How do I get in contact with him? I've notified my mom and aunt and sent this to others. So it turns out one of the most common ways folks can get reconnected is sometimes like a newspaper, like a SF Chronicle or SF Standard will do a report on homelessness. And they'll have like 2 or 3 people experiencing homelessness featured in the report with their names. Weeks after that, sometimes they hear from families who've been doing Google searches, trying to find the loved one, and then they get in touch and have a reconnection. So the thought was, gosh, maybe there's something here that we can create as an organization to kind of take this like serendipitous thing that seems to happen in one-offs and create a nonprofit around that. And Johnny was able to show him the videos from his family. They recorded to him all over the US. And then within 3 weeks of delivering the message, they had all flown on their own dime to San Francisco. I'm sitting in a hotel room with Johnny, not far from here in the marina, and they're looking at me and says, thank you for giving me my family back. And that was the reunion photo. Thank you. So Johnny's still involved in our programs, and I'll share a little bit more about what those programs are. But really, if there's nothing else as a takeaway today, it's this idea that everyone we walk by, that's someone's son, daughter, brother, sister, that's someone's somebody. And I think if we start by seeing people not as problems to solve, but as people to love, we actually are able to get close enough to solve problems. So at Miracle Messages, this is the organization that emerged from this like quasi social experiment, storytelling. Just, my background's as a sociologist. I just really wasn't trying to like change the world or make a difference or even create an organization. I just felt, and this is one of the questions, Paul, that you asked me to answer. I felt like my values and the issue of homelessness were just like irreconcilable. And what I mean by that, I mean that less like lofty and Hallmark movie than it sounds. I felt for many years doing this work like an imposter. I felt like, oh, I see people, there's people in our organization, people I work with, who to me are like angels on earth, just like incredible human beings, going out every week, doing services to our neighbors experiencing homelessness. That's never been me. My background, I worked in education technology for a number of years, received angel investment. Like I was always ill-fitted in the Silicon Valley for-profit like mindset, but was always driven by like using technology to make the world a better place, right? Which sounds almost like uh, anachronistic, but that was the thought. But I realized it wasn't so much homelessness that drew me to do this work. It was my values, specifically my belief that every person is intrinsically valuable and that we're all interconnected. And it just so happens that living in San Francisco 2025, it's hard to hold those values and see them manifested or applied around the issue of homelessness. They're not seen as valuable. It's us and them. And there's less of a scene of interdependence. We speak as if it's an outside issue rather than it's a homegrown problem. So at Miracle Messages, we help people experiencing homelessness rebuild their social support systems and financial security, primarily through family reunifications, a phone buddy program, and one of the first basic income pilots for unhoused folks in the country, which I'll share a little bit about momentarily. So we try to meet people where they're at. This is Gabby Cordell in South Florida, goes out offering our services. We've started to create more of a chapter model, working with both college students as well as local homeless advocates, activists, to visit partner sites, offer folks a chance to reconnect to loved ones, and our other services I'll share about in a moment. And then if someone's interested, and the ways, the mechanism that we do intakes now, it's not just like a video and blasting it on the internet. There's problems with that. It's, potential for exploitation, voyeurism is real there. So we have an online form, a paper form. We also have a hotline, and that phone number is our phone number, 1-800-MISS-YOU. So we own that number. Anyone around the country can call 1-800-MISS-YOU. And we have a network of volunteer digital detectives. So these are like everyday people who enjoy digital sleuthing online, making phone calls, writing letters. We partner with like LexisNexis, Fast People Search, People.com, Ancestry.com. So we have access to all these pretty high-end premium people directories, and we'll do searches, try to locate the loved ones, deliver messages. That's resulted in just over 1,100 reunifications since we got started. Thank you. Yeah. And then from listening to our unhoused neighbors, we realized there's this other side of the coin to the reunion piece, where families reach out to us. Sorry about that. Oh, God. Does anyone want to pretend to be me with my doctor for a second? Here. So, hi. I'm giving a talk right now. We can't. Can you hear me? Okay. I just need a referral. So, I'm flat-footed and I need custom orthotics. And I've been waiting for weeks to try to get a referral. If I give you the fax number, would you be able to send the fax? All right, I'll deal with this. It's fine. We'll deal with it later. All right. I apologize, all. That's not my normal thing, but I don't want to even tell you. And maybe as a segue, the administrative burden like of homelessness is unreal. Like I'm have access to internet, technology, all these things. The number of hoops that our neighbors experiencing homelessness have to jump through. Like right now, we just had this big, beautiful bill bullshit that just, the Senate passed. Like SNAP benefits, it's not even just the availability of SNAP benefits, like the number of people who are eligible for SNAP benefits who actually get SNAP benefits, it's like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. There's so many hoops that we make poor people in this country jump through. Anyways, that was my attempt at a segue, but so we created this Find Them service, and basically families reaching out to us saying, hey, I'm looking for my relative. I don't know how to reach them. Can you help me find them? This is like a needle in a haystack kind of approach, right? And so we started doing these searches. We've been able to do about 130 reunions. And this is actually where I'd invite all of your thoughts, feedback, like your expertise as technologists. The city right now is sitting on names of thousands, tens of thousands of people experiencing homelessness data. We get inquiries from families basically saying, please help me find my relative. I would love to help support them, be part of their, reconnect. We have housing, whatever. There's just this impenetrable wall trying to bridge that divide. A lot of shelters are just terrified of violating HIPAA, and they end up basically not being willing to confirm or deny whether someone's at a facility. So we're hoping to figure out a scenario where we can, even if it's just doing a push rather than a pull of data, and then they can decide if there's a match or not. Anyways, there's something there. Just so you have a reference point, like kind of San Francisco wide. So this is the Navigation Center's system-wide performance between 2015 and 2019. So it's basically tracking people who went into shelters in San Francisco, what happened to them, okay? So of the successful shelter exits, which is the green, 46% of folks had a successful exit, 54% had an unsuccessful exit, meaning like the client left by choice, they were time kicked out of the program, or there was a denial of service, right? Or they just can't reach them again. 60% of successful shelter exits were as a result of family and friend reunification. Okay, 30% were as a result of supportive housing, 10% as a result of transitional housing. So that wasn't mostly us. That was Homeward Bound, which was a program that was really kind of changed and dramatically altered in the last couple of years. But there is this low-hanging fruit opportunity to help folks reconnect and then provide resources and support to try to help on the journey. It's not a one-size-fits-all. There's many people this is totally inappropriate for. It's not a solution to homelessness, but it is one part of the puzzle, and it can make a big difference for many folks. So our goal is to get to 10,000 reunions over the next 10 years. But some of you might be thinking, gosh, relational poverty is poverty, that makes sense. But what if family is part of the problem, not part of the solution? So that's where we created a phone buddy program called Miracle Friends, where we match folks for weekly phone calls and text messages, kind of like a digital pen pal. Yeah, Biscotti, do you recognize yourself? Do you want to click the mic again? No? Okay. Bonnie's been involved in the Miracle Friends program, and I'll let her speak to that. I have a Miracle Friend as well, and our volunteers have now logged over 350,000 conversation minutes. So if any of you are interested in getting matched with a neighbor experiencing homelessness for weekly calls and text messages, we'd love to have you join us. It's like a 20 or 30 minute a week commitment for a few months. And from that, and we're trying to get to a big goal for how many minutes logged in our phone buddy program. But from those conversations, we started hearing pretty consistently from our community members saying, hey, you've asked me to be friends with this person. We're in a relationship. It's really hard to be in a relationship and love this person and trust them and turn a blind eye when they don't know how they're going to get enough food tonight, or they don't know how they're going to get to work on Monday, because it turns out 45, 50% of neighbors experiencing homelessness have some kind of job or some form of income. So couldn't we just give them money and, either you're going to give them money or I'm going to give them money. Someone's got to give them money. And so we created what turned out to be one of the first basic income pilots for unhoused neighbors in the country. We initially raised $50,000 in all private philanthropy individuals. And we gave out $500 a month for 6 months to 14 individuals, all of whom had been nominated by their volunteer friend for participation in our Phone Buddy program. From that, it was a very small experiment, but 2/3 of the individuals who received money secured housing within 6 months, effectively using the money better than I could have used it for them. Money primarily, that one's out of place. Money was primarily spent on housing, food, childcare, emergencies, debt, paying down debt, things of that sort. And Elizabeth, who's featured in this photo here, one of the first things she did was make a donation to Miracle Messages. And I was like, Elizabeth, you didn't need to do that. That wasn't part of the thing. She's like, well, I didn't do it for you. I did it for myself so I could once again feel the dignity of supporting causes I believe in. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So, there's the breakdown of the money. We've given out well over $1 million to date and are looking to expand that to $10 million in the next 10 years. So just kind of wrapping things up, because I want to make sure Bonnie has plenty of time and we can have a conversation. That's what we do at Miracle Messages. Undergirding all of that is really this idea of narrative change, right? The hearts and minds of people. We talk a lot about homelessness in San Francisco, maybe in some of your communities. We don't spend nearly enough time talking about housed people. We just talk about homelessness. We don't talk about our role in this situation. So at Miracle Messages, this is our team. It's a very small but mighty team. We also have the Miracle Messages Advisory Council, which Bonnie is a member of. And to me, it's just this work of healing relationships is such a stark contrast to the norm on the streets. This was the most heartbreaking sign I've ever seen in my 11 years doing this work. The guy had the sign, just says, at least give me the finger. I can't imagine getting to a place where I'd rather have someone flip me off than having what I'm getting at baseline, which is just totally ignored, right? So also wrote a book, have a few copies here if anyone's interested for purchase, $20. Really the mindset is no one should go through homelessness alone, but as long as homelessness exists, we believe that no one should go through homelessness alone, because who among us can get through life alone? So 2 questions I just invite all of you to just think about and reflect on for a moment. So first question, how many of you care about the issue of homelessness? And I imagine, every hand, everyone's kind of reflecting on it, but, all of us care about the homeless issue. But a second question that really doesn't get asked, how many of you know someone who's currently experiencing homelessness? And in my experience, it's never more than about, I see a few hands, thanks. It's never more than about 5% of any room that I give a talk to. And as gently but as clearly as I can say, I think that's part of the issue. Imagine we're talking about any other social justice issue and we don't have any relationships of any people actually experiencing homelessness. So the stories that have impacted my life are the ones that I really highlight in the book, that have changed my heart on this issue and helped me understand it. Nice words by nice people. Just a few stats I just wanted to share, kind of each of us have in our back pocket. So the next time you're in a conversation with someone, you can kind of use as it's appropriate. So of the 6 million people in the United States who experience homelessness each year, what percentage do you think are youth? A, B, C, or D? D. Okay, 1 in every 3. And this is all stuff in the book. For youth who age out of foster care, 36% will experience homelessness by the time they're 26 years old. For Black youth, that goes up to 60%. 3 in 5 who age out of foster care will experience homelessness by the time they're 26. We like to use narratives of like choice and deservedness around homelessness. Remember that stat as just one of many that I could share. 50% of unhoused adults first experienced homelessness as children. And for the chronically homeless, that percentage is even higher. 45% of adults have at least a job, and another 40% have some form of disability that makes it impossible to work. There's over 3,000 counties in the United States. There's not a single county where someone who's working full-time at the federal minimum wage can afford a 2-bedroom apartment at the fair market rent, and less than 1% of counties where they can afford a 1-bedroom apartment, right? And then Lainey, who gave a quote, was featured in the book in the work, wages, and wealth section. She said, all the time, people would just say, get a job. I'd cry. A couple of times I'd actually just sit there and say, you know what? I do have a job. We're just down on our luck right now. And then they would just walk away. So that's the work at Miracle Messages. But now, most importantly, I'm excited to bring up my friend Bonnie Bull to share a little bit of her story.
So Kevin, we have some questions. Is it okay if we ask some questions to you? And we'll get Bonnie, if you had a chance to roll up there, that would be great. We'll get you all set up, get your microphone there. So we had some questions, like how big is Miracle Message relative to people and the region that you serve?
We're tiny.
Okay.
We're super tiny. I think we serve across the country. There's a few hubs where we really have a base of partners, organizations that refer to us, but we do get referrals across the country through the hotline. But I mean, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the numbers of people. You know, I think San Francisco estimates are 10 to 20,000 plus people experiencing homelessness.
So how many people would you say are full-time at Miracle Messages, kind of thinking through how to scale, how to build this out?
We're about 11 full-time.
11 people.
Yep. Yeah.
Amazing.
Full-time. And I stepped down as CEO about a year and a half ago. It's a whole nother conversation, but you know, I believe that founder syndrome is all too real. It's very easy to make an organization synonymous with you. It's like, this is not only my baby, this is me. And it was starting to become like that with Miracle Messages. And so I felt it was important while things were going well and we had funding and support to raise my hand and say, I think it's time for new leadership. And we brought in a remarkable new CEO, Mary Carl, who brings way more background and experience in the space than I had coming in. And she's led the organization for the last 2 years. And then I've been serving as founder in residence. So I'll continue doing that for the next month and then move more to like a strategic advisor and board chair. So
CEO emeritus. Okay.
Yeah. CEO emeritus,
okay.
yeah.
That's awesome. So in terms of your vision, like where would you, if you could just like push this thing forward and dream, the community dream, where do they feel Miracle Messages has a fit in a 5-year plan? Or like, what is the potential? What is your hope or your expectation? I saw the 10 million people, is that right? That you'd like to reach? Is that right? 10,000. Sorry.
Either way.
Either way. Okay, 10,000. But what's the long-term vision and what role is this part of another organization? Does this become its own entity? Does every city have a chapter? Talk to us about like, what is the potential scale for this?
Yeah, definitely the chapter model is part of that scaling. We right now have a few chapters, like there's a group of students for the last 3 or 4 years in UT Austin, Texas at the university there. And they've been going out every week, every couple of weeks, offering services, reconnecting folks with loved ones, helping people sign up for a phone buddy program. But more than anything, they're just building relationships with their unhoused neighbors. So I think there's a lot of pent up desire for all of us. Like right now, this is my Kevin soapbox for like half a second. It's a very frustrating time in the world. And one of the most frustrating parts is it can feel overwhelming and totally helpless. Like what on earth can we do about any of this? Homelessness is actually not one of those issues. It shouldn't be. There's so much to be done. It's we treat it as a criminal matter. It's really more of a community matter. I mean, it comes down to housing, affordability, access, but it comes down to really, relationships as well. So our hope is, when I started this journey, the work we do was seen very much as like a nice to have, not an essential. In the annoying language of Silicon Valley, it was like, it's a vitamin, not a painkiller. But I think understanding that even seeing relational support as a nice to have comes from such a place of privilege that you have no reference point. How many, like right now, we ask, I'll say this. How many people in this country right now living paycheck to paycheck, 40% of people not knowing where they get $400 for an unexpected emergency? You almost have to ask a question that never gets asked. Why aren't more people experiencing homelessness? Why isn't half the country right now homeless? And what we're finding is social support, family doubled up, tripled up, people's resiliency. So I think just normalizing, not saying reunions and phone buddy is the silver bullet around relationships. There's a lot of good work that can be done on peer support that we don't really focus on at Miracle Messages, but just seeing social support and then the financial support that comes with relationships as critical tools in the toolkit. So,
so one last question. You've mentioned phone buddies a couple of times, grabbing a phone number and running. So do you guys have a training program, an orientation process? What's that like? And how do you help folks interested in doing this feel more comfortable becoming a phone buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share this. Like, I'm kind of now giving a talk on homelessness. I have a book on homelessness. Like, I have many friends who are unhoused. When I started this journey, I was pretty nervous, pretty terrified. You know, the first person I met to do the GoPro thing, I approached this person was connected through a mutual friend. You know, we're meeting in the Castro right by Molly Stone's, broad daylight, San Francisco. And I instinctively found myself reaching my hand into my pocket and grabbing my keys as a weapon. I've never done that before. I'm, 6'2", straight white Christian guy, right? I can generally walk around and not have that question. I just instinctively did that. That's where I started on this issue, right? I'm not proud of that, but I think like there's so much shame and feelings of guilt on this issue. I don't want to say I don't want to say the wrong thing, do the right thing. I think the starting point is just having conversations, and what we try to do with our volunteer base is provide the training, the support, the trauma-informed care, the weekly check-ins. We do a weekly support call for all of our volunteers. So anyone, even if you're like kind of nervous or the idea of getting involved and connecting with unhoused neighbor makes you anxious, that's where I started. That's where most of us start. So,
do you mind taking just a couple more organizational questions? Is that all right? If you guys have any questions, you can raise your hand. So get the back there. And Bonnie, we're looking forward to hearing your story. So give us a second.
I just want to make a comment. Thank you for the beautiful work you've done, and the reunification. That percentage is very encouraging and exciting, and it's something I didn't know about homelessness. And I also noticed that, 30% of clients will exit their housing or their program and, exit and decide to go off. And so I think it's just important to remember everyone is different, as we know, and we always talk about, and people have very unique reasons they're homeless, or, they may desire to be outside of some kind of system or have independence. So just that part as well too.
Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like this is an issue that you've thought a lot about. You do the work in the space. Yeah, I think this is less of a response, more of like a question that I sit with a lot on this issue. Is most of the neighbors who I've met doing this work, the idea of choice is like a very complicated one, right? Like someone who's kicked out of their house because of their identity or, with parents, are they making a choice to leave, to be outside, right? It's complicated. I'll just share one quick anecdote that comes to mind. It's a great comment. So one of the people in the book that I featured, the breakdown of the book is basically the first third is on breakdowns in our shared humanity that lead to homelessness. Then the next third is around breakdowns in systems. So like we often just talk about like the housing, the income inequality, health disparities, mental behavioral health, youth outcomes, work, wages, and wealth. I spend the first third just really talking about relational poverty, exclusion, paternalism, rugged individualism, things that are kind of in more the social side to how we treat our unhoused neighbors. Anyways, in one of those first chapters, there's a person named Ronnie Goodman. Did anyone hear the name, recognize the name Ronnie? Ronnie the Runner, he was known as. So he was a marathon runner who also was an amazing artist. And he experienced homelessness for many years after getting released from San Quentin. And one day I was having a conversation with Ronnie, and I asked him, like, oh, what's your prospects for getting housed? And he's like, oh, I have housing available to me if I want it. And I kind of was like, really? Like, okay, why are you still on the streets, Ronnie? Like, what's going on? And he kind of looked at me really patiently. And I had a little bit of like paternalism and judgment in my voice. And he looked at me, he's like, well, the housing that's available to me is in a housing unit where drugs are present 24/7. And I have a history of addiction. And if I move back into that unit, I'm going to relapse and die. So I am waiting for senior housing in the next year or two, hoping to be eligible for that. So it went from like seeing this choice he was making as like, why on earth would you do that? To then saying that makes complete sense the closer I got. So I think often I found that what we really need to do is just get close enough to understand the choices that are being made, right? So it sounds that that's aligned with what you're just saying.
And thank you for that.
Excellent work. I'm curious about you said over $1 million you've given away in miracle money, right? I heard another presenter talking about best practices in philanthropy, and internationally, giving away cash is actually acknowledged as kind of the baseline. So, like, if your intervention isn't more effective than just giving them money, don't do it. But he said that the studies show domestically that's not the case. He hadn't studied your study. He wasn't aware of it. But I'd be interested in what things are out there, what factors, why is this succeeding so well, and more of the details around that. Like you're all the people you give are part of a phone buddy system. So I don't know if that's a question, but
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, Ted. And yeah, just to clarify, not everyone we give money to is now in the Phone Buddy program. So kind of just the programmatic evolution on it. So started out 50K in a pilot. Every person we gave money to was referred by a friend and in our Phone Buddy program. Of the 14 people we gave money to, we had received about 50 or 60 referrals from volunteers. It was like we created a committee and we had like 8 criteria looking at how the money was anticipated to be used, different questions around diversity, different types of homelessness and housing status. So totally non-scientific and picking one by one, right, as a group. So from that, because of those results, we said we need to actually create some rigor to this process. So we developed a randomized controlled trial where we worked with the University of Southern California School of Social Work and Professor Ben Henwood, who's one of the co-authors of like the Housing First book with Sam Sambaris. He was our PI. So we just finished that. We'll be releasing the results of that in the coming months. Some of the early findings I can share is still most of the money is spent on housing, food, childcare, things like that. We didn't see a dramatic drop in homelessness in the treatment group of the $750 a month for 12 months compared to the control group of $50, just for like doing the surveys and the questions. So there's a lot to be done to further research that. Like, is it the amount of money wasn't enough? Is it the time period wasn't enough? Another piece is, yep. It dropped, but it didn't drop by a statistically significant difference from the baseline of just giving the $50 to people. We didn't have a baseline, right? So there's a lot more to research. One interesting piece I'll just share, and if you're interested in this side of things, Miracle Money, we're one of the RCTs that's come out. There's also the Denver Basic Income Project. They just released their report in the last year. And then the other one is the New Leaf Project out of Vancouver, Canada. And they've all found pretty similar results where they'll see some shift down, but not necessarily like 2/3 of people getting off the streets. I think the current thinking is, first of all, $750 a month for 12 months. Like, how far can you actually take that? We're finding, though, that people are using the money to then create a level of stability to then get the benefits they need, get back to employment, provide childcare. So there is a stabilizing effect. I think part of it is just 1 year. If you know that the last payment you're getting is in like 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, it doesn't allow for the level of savings. So I think one thing we're looking to do is provide longer payments of smaller amounts and create incentive structures to, how money's used. It's a whole conversation. But the current version of what we're doing, just to finish my thought, is we have two programs. One is called the Thriving Community Fund, and the other one is the Dignity Fund. Dignity Fund, we're giving, I think it's about $300 a month to everyone who is in our Phone Buddy program over the course of the year. No nomination required, no selection, and we're giving it out and selecting people in order of seniority of who joined the program the oldest. So we're kind of working our way to recent. The Thriving Community Fund is a partnership that we have with 5 different nonprofits across the state of California, where they actually are given about 20 slots for recipients that they provide services to receive a basic income. And so they're able to then nominate people and refer people to us. So that's just get going, but we should talk offline more about this. So. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question about your sources of funding, and I'm sorry if I missed that, but if you could kind of say current sources of funding, maybe desired or hoped for sources of funding, and then maybe your perspectives on, private donations, individuals supporting versus, government or institutional funding.
Yeah, and I'll just be brief because I want to make sure we have enough time for Bonnie to share her story. We're about half and half individual philanthropy, individual donations, and then half from foundations. We've received a few $1 million from Google.org as one of our big foundation backers. Tipping Point Community, which Daniel Laurie was the previous leader of, Sam Cobb is now. They were one of our first funders in San Francisco. And then individuals, we have everything from folks, $50 a month kind of recurring giving to folks who've made, 7-figure gifts. We just secured our first government contract in the county of Santa Cruz County. And we're working closely with Santa Cruz on developing kind of a implementation of our program. So, yeah.
One last question, then we're going to get to Bonnie.
Really great creative way to tackle that problem. I was just thinking about, you made me think about that book by Robert Bellah, Habits of the Heart, and how just our country doesn't have that kind of cultural habit of addressing relational poverty. But as you were speaking, I was just thinking, everybody's talking about AI and how AI apps are now addressing that relational poverty among youth. And some are helped by that. Do you see a role in that? How AI could be used as a automated messaging tool?
Wonderful question. It's a whole nother conversation. But what I'll say is two things. So first, we are starting to explore, and would love, like a lot of you are going to be more experts than what we are, how to use AI to accelerate the work we're doing. We thought about ways to do a more automated process for people finding. It would be ideal if up at the moment of intake, we were able to say, here are the 3 most likely matches of the loved one that you're trying to reconnect to, because there is a discursive process that we have to do. That's a huge bottleneck for what we do, to do the detective work, find leads, and then go back to the neighbor experiencing homelessness and say, is this your mom? Is this your mom? Oh, she didn't have a tattoo, or she never lived at that address, right? So if we can narrow the time lapse between when we gather the information and when we start generating leads and start kind of qualifying those leads, that would be in itself massive. And then there's a whole nother thing around find them and the work of checking databases for matches for the people that we do intakes from families. The one other side about the habits of the heart, I'm really glad you brought up Robert Bella's book. I actually think I slightly disagree with the premise that we don't have that anymore in this country. And what I'll say is we have it, but it's in very time-bound specific instances, specifically around shared traumas. There's a disaster, an earthquake, a fire, a wildfire, a flood. In that brief moment, everyone in the community does the hashtag such and such strong. We rally together and we start seeing this kind of commonality, common bonds that I think is under the surface but never really manifests. And it's short-lived, doesn't last. This is, you know, what sociologist Charles E. Fritz referred to as the emergence of the therapeutic community. It's not a long-lasting thing. But I think there's a lot we can learn from those moments where in many cases, people who are made homeless by a disaster are not seen as the other, are not seen as what did you do wrong to merit this situation. It's really, oh gosh, but for the grace of God go I, how can I help out? And even in San Francisco, as a precedent, you know, the 1906 earthquake and fire, not far from here in Golden Gate Park, we had a population in 1906 of 400,000 residents. 250,000 people were homeless. 250,000 people lost their homes out of 400,000. Within 2 years of the earthquake and fire, the last earthquake encampment in Golden Gate Park was closed. All the individuals had been put into earthquake cottages, paying $2 a month towards the $50 price of the earthquake cottage. You can still find earthquake cottages in the city. So I think there is a way and a precedent that we have that often we don't look at around homelessness. But I think if we look at it closer to the disaster that it is, that we just don't see the floodwaters, the earthquake, the fire, the flames, the smoke, but we're seeing survivors of a disaster that's often invisible in terms of economic dislocation, affordable housing, things like that. So I do think there's a potential. I'm hopeful.